And we're the Joy Junkies.
Thank you for joining us today at Sweet Tea's Coffee Shop.
We love sweet teas. We love to have our sweet teas. Today it's a warm day and I'm having some water.
And our sweet tea brings us a lot of joy as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we kind of talked last time about this whole idea of being satisfied. And satisfaction, relational satisfaction was about being known and seen and understood. I think there are lots more relationships where we don't feel that.
Yeah, that connection is not as strong.
Or maybe not at all.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have that secure relationship that we talked about, but something happens. And I like the term, we have a relationship rupture. When something happens and we have a missed connection, there's a rupture, and we don't always know how to repair those ruptures in the relationship. So I thought maybe this week we could talk about relationship ruptures and repairs.
I think that sounds like a plan. Absolutely.
I'm glad you agree. It gives me joy that you agree. So, this idea of missed connection, I was thinking about in relationship when we have a misconnection, we don't necessarily identify a misconnection the way we would if we were taking the bus or riding a plane. But if you miss your connection, a connecting flight, you get stuck somewhere, and that can be quite traumatizing.
Yeah.
It can be really, really a challenge.
Because you can feel alone and your relational circuits just go whoop, and they kind of deplete.
Kind of deplete. Holy cow.
They deplete.
They can be completely depleted.
Yes.
So this idea that life is a journey and relationships are on a journey, and when you have a missed connection, so when you don't feel seen or heard, or maybe more importantly understood, that's a relationship rupture.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I just think you're saying everything so well. All I can do is agree.
I love it when you agree with me. She's giving me a lot of joy today. How about you? Yes, indeed. So, from a therapeutic standpoint, she's cracking me up. From a therapeutic standpoint, we have a term for that, and we call it trauma.
Yeah, that's a thing.
It's real.
That's a thing.
And it happens in relationships.
It does. Relational breakdown, and I'd say like the peak of those would be trauma. Mm-hmm. I think that in its the most like severe relational disconnection would be trauma.
Mm-hmm. In the material that we study about joy, they talk about having two types of trauma. There are A traumas and there are B traumas.
Yes.
The B traumas are the things that we often think about as traumas. You are raped. There is child abuse. There are, she would never do that for real. But there's abuse of some sort. Yeah. There's some sort of active relational thing that's happening against you, and it's very obvious and it's very breaking.
So I was just gonna say you can observe that, and you can become easily aware when such harm is present.
Right, and it hurts our hearts. Anytime we hear about it, our hearts just really, really, really hurt. But there's another kind of trauma, and most of us don't understand this quite as much, and it's an A trauma. Those A traumas are the times in which
it's not as obvious.
We have a need.
Might not be.
Or something an exchange needs to happen, a relational miss is not as aware, or it's not as meaningful. So I need to feel heard, I need to feel seen.
Absolutely.
And I don't make that connection. We had friends that just walked in. We're going to ignore them for the rest of this episode and go talk to them in a minute. But we're going to go give hugs. So anywho, let's go, because I'm going to have a relationship rupture. I just ignored my friends. We have a misconnection. We'll come back to that in just a few minutes.
I just watched all that happen before my eyes. I'm just the bystander.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Like, we're talking about misconnections. So that would have been my friend, not making any eye contact with my friend, might feel like an A trauma for them because they might have wanted to feel seen.
They may have had an emotional need to connect. And so, so just as far as like the two types of trauma go, and one being more obvious and the other one maybe being more subtle, it might take longer to realize that there was a lack, that there was a true lack. Right. So I think that as we grow in joy, we become more aware of these breakdowns as well. And it just, you can start to see them a lot clearer.
Well, we begin to value our own needs. I think that that's really important as we come to terms with relationships, and we understand when I need something and when I feel afraid and I feel like something's not going to get met. What do I do? What happens? I often will like turn away from people and I'll go and be alone.
Right. Just those things
Build
that
a
block.
wall.
Yeah.
Oh, we are on it today. So we build
kidding.
walls and we block other people, and we get in our own little hole.
Yeah.
We become like people.
You can isolate easily when that happens because you have a legitimate fear of being hurt.
Yeah. Earlier, you were talking about, I think the term you used was negative Nancy and Debbie Downer.
You want to talk about that?
I think that this is a really good place.
All right.
Yeah.
I even wrote this down because I realized that it's an important point to make. So, with that in mind, how many of you know a negative Nancy or a Debbie Downer, or have you ever been one before? I have. Yeah, we have. Where you're just stuck in a really negative place, and it's really hard to see out of that, and your relational receptors are so turned off, and it's just a not very pleasant place to be at all. It happens to the best of us. And so, with that in mind, think of negative Nancy, think of Debbie Downer, or even you can think of a past experience where may have happened to you. Do you feel a disconnect? Is there a real great challenge to joy build? Because oftentimes in those situations, that challenge of joy building, you can see that it's there, and you can become aware of that, and that actually can be a great opportunity to have like a teaching lesson in order to return to joy, and that the power that has over whatever the problem might be.
When we're talking about a teaching lesson, are you talking about kind of teaching yourself something or teaching Nancy or Debbie something?
So yeah, that's a great question, because both. I mean, obviously everyone has the choice to be open, right? So you can keep that wall up as long as you desire, but it's nice to have it down. So with that in mind,
so you might have to talk yourself through it first.
Right. So there's a need that emerges to really look internally. And then once that happens, it's so much easier to look externally.
True. In our studies, one of the things that we talk about in returning to joy is that we connect with this idea of appreciation.
Yes.
And for me, this has been so powerful. I don't know how it works for you, but for me, appreciation starts with asking Emmanuel to remind me of something I can appreciate. And Emmanuel is simply this idea that God is with us. Like Emmanuel's another name for Jesus, but it's your concept of God being present with you in your moment, so you're not alone. Relationally, even if you feel alone, you can be present with God, and He can remind you internally of something to appreciate.
I listened to a song today that was called I Am Not Alone.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just very fitting timing, because it reminded me that even though something may have made me feel alone, and my perception was that I truly was, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that brought me joy. That brought me peace. That consoled me and made me realize that there's satisfaction to be found.
And it began to turn your relationship circuits on, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it allowed you to begin to reconnect.
You know what, though? I did have to acknowledge a block to joy, which we talked about in previous episodes. Just to real quick bounce on that. That process did, in fact, have to happen in order for me to return to joy. And then that place, I started to grow in appreciation and gratitude.
Right. And I think that's important. First, you have to acknowledge where you're at. You have to see your own...
and where other people are at, too.
Well, certainly. If you don't know where you're at, you might not be able to clearly identify where somebody else is at. And I think always to realize, I think in a previous episode we talked about security. So I might not feel secure in any of the relationships that are around me because of whatever reason. Perhaps there's trauma in my life. Perhaps there's chaos all around me and I don't feel safe and I don't feel secure. But I can always feel secure in a relationship with God. And I don't want to go down that a long, long way.
But it's about time we mention Him.
Yeah.
Just mention Him.
He is the source of all joy.
There's a fruit of... The joy is a fruit for a reason.
Yeah.
It was designed and created to be that way.
In relationships. So asking Emmanuel to remind you of something that you can appreciate is kind of the first step in returning to joy, even in repairing a relationship that has some sort of rupture to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's just a really good reminder for me, even personally today. Something important to hear, that appreciation and being reminded of things can really help remind us that relationship is always greater than problem.
Always greater than the problem. After I've had that moment with Emmanuel and I really ask for that appreciation, and I sort of sit with him, and there's always a surprise. I can't tell you how many times like I ask for an appreciation and he brings something up that I hadn't really thought of or even really thought about appreciating, and then unfolds it in ways that didn't make any sense to me in the moment, but as I'm appreciating, I'm like, wow, there's so many facets to this that I hadn't even considered in the moment. And then, after I've had that experience with Emmanuel, if I have the opportunity to share it with somebody else, that appreciation kind of comes full circle.
The hallelujahs multiply.
Yeah. So, we'd like to encourage you to think about that. The other thing, as we kind of come close to the end of our time, because we're trying to be mindful of time with these, sometimes we have relationship ruptures, and for whatever reason, they're hard to repair.
It's really true. Relationship takes work.
Yeah, and the other person may not want to do the work, and they might want to go on, and they don't want to be present in the relationship with you, and that can be really heartbreaking. And sometimes it's a temporary thing, and sometimes it's a permanent thing, and we don't want to think that all relationship ruptures are permanent. But if there's a time period in which you're lonely for that person and the relationship doesn't come back, I want to remind you that you're never alone. And I saw a quote earlier, and I want to read it to you because it spoke to me.
And on being never alone, your desire to be seen, heard, and understood is a really good desire to have.
For sure. So the quote says, most things will be okay eventually, but not everything will be. Sometimes you'll put up a good fight and lose. Sometimes you'll hold on really hard and realize that there's no choice but to let go. So acceptance is a small, quiet room. And acceptance can feel lonely for a short period of time, but I think you have to come to that terms when a relationship isn't going to renew and it's not going to repair. Acceptance is beginning to close the door and accept a new reality, come to a new reality.
So naturally, if you're trying to build joy and live in the power of that, then acceptance is a key component.
So the big question this week, I think...
Yeah, please tell me.
I know. I think the big question this week is, who do you have that you can share your appreciation with? So if you're doing appreciation...
Challenge of the week.
Yeah, for sure. If you're doing appreciation with Emmanuel, and you want to have a complete cycle of joy, who do you have that you can share that with? I would suggest you share the video so it makes sense that what we're talking about. But beyond that, I know, what are you sharing this for me? But beyond that, identify them and begin to tell them, I want to be able to share joy with you. I want to build this relationship where we can share with each other what God is doing in our lives. That's actually how this relationship started, and it's a really cool relationship. And we wish for all of you this good feeling.
Truth.
I think this is the end of episode 6.
We are the proof of, well, I would say joy. And you are too.
Right.
You are as well.
Yes.
You're the bomb.
Always.
Don't forget it.
And we're so grateful that you are on this journey with us, that you continue to share and with our joy with us, and we hope that you will stay with us for our next episode because we're really excited to give it to you. Anything else from you?
Don't let anybody ever dull your sparkle.
That's right. Ever. Keep shining.
Keep your relational circuits on. You can do it. Peace and blessings.